Okay, hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webinar, Future Schools, the Power of Connection. My name is Kevin Hogan. I am the Content Director for eSchool News, and I am happy you are joining us today for what I know will be a very insightful and important conversation. This event is brought to you by Verizon. Verizon is a global technology leader with more than 2 decades of experience focused on the technology needs of K-12 schools. The company serves as a trusted partner for thousands of schools across the U.S. Their ongoing collaboration with schools of all sizes gives them a unique perspective on the benefits of the evolving role of technology for student outcomes. Verizon creates effective solutions that meet the significant challenge faced by K-12 schools today, from hybrid learning to cybersecurity to student safety and more. To find out more about Verizon's K-12 education solutions, be sure to go to the website. Now, before we get to our conversation, I'd like to take a minute to go over some of the features of the platform that we're using for this webinar. The event is being recorded, so you don't have to worry about missing a thing. Within a few days, you'll receive an email message that contains a link to the recorded webinar, along with a PDF of the slides. If you have a question or comment for the panel, please use the chat function. Also, feel free to use this feature to contact someone from the eSchool News team if you have a technical question. And I really would encourage folks out there who are watching and listening to really, give us your thoughts, your ideas, and your questions. I know it helps the panelists kind of help guide the conversation because the whole idea is to have you gain insights to their expertise. So the more we know from you, the better we can control the conversation. So now with these housekeeping items out of the way, let's get started with the conversation and some introductions. First, Kim Mirabella. Kim serves as the Vice President of Business Development and Strategic Sales for the Verizon Public Sector Federal and SLED, and oversees the development, design, and capture of strategic opportunities, as well as new team focusing on fixed wireless access. Kim's tenure at Verizon spans 26 years and includes a variety of roles within enterprise and government sales, Fios consumer sales, Verizon Lean Six Sigma, and marketing. In her previous role, Kim served as Director of Southeast Government Sales within the public sector team, focused on state and local government, public safety, K-12, and higher education. She started her career serving wireline customers, selling IP networking, voice data networks, security, managed services, advanced comm, and more. Kim, I'd like to know what you did after lunch. You did a lot of stuff there. Next up, Scott Anderson. Scott is a longtime distinguished architect with more than 30 years of experience. He has designed solutions that span the world in a number of different industries, including financial services, U.S. government, state government, aviation, oil and gas, and many others. He has helped customers modernize their application portfolios. He has also helped customers design new structures around how they build and use those networking solutions. Scott developed a tool set for mission-focused application evaluation called the Enterprise Resource Triangle. Through this system, customers can evaluate what and how they are building applications to meet their mission's goal. And last but certainly not least, Wes Winthrow. Wes is a senior emerging services strategy leader, technical direction agent to governments, Fortune 500 account strategist, team director, and hands-on technology expert recognized for eliciting top performance in technical teams. Wes is a motivational and collaborative professional who creates peak staff engagement via an immersive digital cultural experience with cross-functional teams who collaborate with clients on the art of the possible to maximize and accelerate digital transformation. A believer in positive internal change to foster improvement in performance, Wes's servant leadership style, visionary capability, and work ethic have enabled him to exceed corporate goals, launch innovative programs, control costs and risks, and retain and engage talented employees and productive teams during periods of substantial corporate change. So a real panel of heavy hitters here. I'm really excited to be able to tap their insights for our audience, and for educators. But it seems like such a wide variety of expertise across a number of different verticals that I know that education sometimes benefits from the innovations that happen in other industries beforehand. And because of the nature of education, I think they have to wait a few years to kind of see those innovations spill out onto them. So hopefully in this conversation, we can start that dynamic. And I guess we'll just kind of jump right into the weeds here, Kim. Maybe we'll start with you. And
sure.
You can talk about some of the greatest technology challenges that you see K-12 schools facing these days. I know there are a number of them.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. So welcome everybody to the call. I'm super happy to be here. And I would just say, even though I have spent most of my career as a technologist, I come from a family of educators. So my parents are 30-year plus teachers. My sister is a principal. My daughter is an early childhood educator as well. So I completely get it. And I'm passionate about this space. And so what I love is to be able to bring what we can from a technology perspective to be able to facilitate digital transformation, digital learning in the classroom for both the teachers and the students and the parents. I think you've got to kind of got that trifecta, right? But I would say the biggest challenges are, there's really three. One is cybersecurity. I mean, most definitely one of the biggest things we learned during the pandemic was, how do we protect our kids now that we're encouraging them to utilize online tools, online learning, doing so much more digitally? How do we make sure that our kids are safe, that they're not drifting off into a website that they shouldn't and whatnot? So I think that that's really, really important. And then from a digital equity and inclusion perspective, I mean, there are still 17 million households that don't have any connectivity at home. So, at Verizon, we're really passionate about making sure that everybody is connected. So making sure that through some of our programs like digital inclusion, et cetera, that we're in the VILS program, that we're making sure that for those certain folks that maybe can't afford digital technology, that we have options for them as well. And sometimes it's not so easy, right? Because, we've had a lot of government programs, a lot of grant programs, a lot of funding, most recently ACP from the federal government. But as those programs start to wind down, the problem doesn't go away. So we've still got to figure out as a society, how do we care for those and make sure that nobody is left behind? And then the third thing, which is really exciting, is all about the future technology. So we're hearing so much about Gen AI and all the excitement around that, but how do we bring some of that safely and privately, right, into the classroom to make sure that we're able to leverage the power of AR, VR, and Gen AI to improve the learning outcomes of our students. So those are the three big areas. There's a lot to unpack underneath all three of those, but I think those are the three that really kind of keep us up at night and keep our teams motivated to make sure that we're moving forward in those areas.
Yeah, I definitely agree that cybersecurity continues to be seem like the number one concern when I speak to tech directors and superintendents in terms of the protection of their districts, even during the depths of the pandemic, when you had these various new learning platforms being put out there and students working from home, and of course just the imminent dangers inherent with the pandemic. But cybersecurity was still something they were still getting hammered with that. And Scott, as we mentioned in your bio, you've been in a number of different industries, but amongst where cybersecurity certainly was a top priority. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the needs for district leaders when it comes to their technology solutions and the importance of securing those networks.
Well, absolutely. First of all, I used to be a teacher once upon a time. And now I'm going to date myself by saying once upon a time, I was one of the people that the state of Indiana called and said, we need you to go to a classroom and connect that classroom to the internet. And I would take a Hayes, 9600 baud modem with me, and then I would call the local telephone company, and I would say, hey guys, you have a phone line coming to the school. Can you call me 2 days before it's going to be delivered so I know I can be there, and I know the phone line will be there? So I used to do that. That was what I did. It was a system called Student Teacher Electronic Productivity. That was built by Indiana University, deployed throughout the state of Indiana. Very cool system, but the reality is that's only one part of the puzzle. Right? Getting communication, getting community, getting people talking to each other, that's critical. And the infrastructure component and what Kim spoke of, that really leads you to this new world of connectivity. But let's talk about what this ultimately will bring. First of all, it has to be secure. I helped design a email system for one of the states here in the U.S. For all the students. And we actually, I wasn't working at Verizon at the time, but we actually had to go back and look at how do we remove students' names from visibility, right? Because that's the first form of security. If you can't see the email addresses, you can't send to them. And then the other thing we had to do is go in and modify the product so that an inbound SMTP message to a student was automatically rejected, right? So we had to go twofold, right? We had to take them out of the directory so they weren't visible, and then we had to reject at the internet connection, right, the inbound email, right? So students could not send and receive internet mail to decrease the risk for them. And that's kind of the posture that you have to consider, is how do you do this the right way? The last piece of it, is this new wave of connectivity options that are coming. And one of the things that people are talking about, right, is AI, right? Everybody's talking about AI. Kim mentioned Gen AI, generative AI, the ability to generate something with an AI engine, right? Be it, they're often now called multimodal. So that could be, I'm generating voice, I'm generating video, I'm generating audio. You can literally go to some of these sites, drop 10 words in, and it'll create a rock and roll song for you. May not be a good song, but it'll create it for you, right? Well, this reality of multimodal AI and generative AI, and as we move into the next future of AGI, there's a requirement for it that it's really important that people get, and hopefully people will understand. You got to have a reliable connection for that to be of value. Because if you have a connection, right, you're sitting there and you're connected to Gen AI and you are working on a project and you submit it to the Gen AI, right, it's going to go from your device out to the cloud, get processed and brought back. If you don't have a reliable connection in between the two, you may never get back the answer you need. So it makes it much more difficult. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah, and Wes, does that resonate with you in terms of the aspects of cybersecurity and the priorities of those in terms of kind of protecting the pipes?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. And similar to Kim, I grew up in a family of educators. So my mother taught for 30 plus years. My aunts taught for 30 plus years. My friends' parents were the principals at our schools, right? So there was no escaping, right, the educational system growing up. But one good thing, which I appreciate, is all of them throughout, right, encouraged myself as well as the broader group of people we went to school with, to get involved in technology, right? So we're a product of what's happened over the last 30 plus years. Now, on the cyber side, which is kind of unique and interesting, right, is I've been involved with it long enough to see it go from, where children have been able to break into their school systems and change their grades, right, to it evolving to where it's got to today, which is, much more sophisticated and, much more highly attacked, as well as there's just more of a financial motive behind it, right? So it used to be you'd hear about, changing your grades, but now really the primary attack point and threat motive is actually financial. So, Verizon publishes every year the annual data breach investigation report. And so this is a report we've been doing for 17 years. We pull information from 94 different countries. So you're talking public sector, private sector. And in that report, you mentioned earlier talking about kind of the downstream impact of COVID. We're starting to see some of that in our metrics where we're seeing some of it pivot. So for example, we explored about 10,000 breaches, a little bit north of 10,000 breaches in this year's report, and a little bit over 1,500 of them actually came from the educational space. So specifically targeting, right, the public sector in the education space, which is very unique because that's just, really increased year over year. And again, it's the financial motive, but you're also seeing a lot more around ransomware and extortion, where they're getting information, personal data, and then either trying to get you to pay ransomware, right? Or that other financial motive of extortion, which we're starting to see an uptick in, which is threatening to put the information out about your students out on the public, typically on the dark web. So it's just been fascinating, right? Kind of growing up in this industry, as well as seeing it evolve where it is today. And then also just spending time in just the educational system with my family, seeing the teachers also learning to adapt to how to learn how to educate students using technology as well.
Right, because there's kind of two sides to the coin when it comes to cybersecurity, right? I mean, there's the hardcore technical protections, the algorithms that are there, two-party authentication, all the various things that annoy users but protect their data. And then there's the other side of the coin, which is human behavior. I mean, it's not even necessarily about the technology, but it's about, and this is where AI can kind of slip in here too, as that gets more sophisticated, just fooling people into giving away passwords and getting in. Can you talk a little bit for our audience about is there one that's more important than the other? Or, I mean, is it in terms of strategies, in terms of protection, where would you start? I'll throw that open to the whole panel there.
Maybe I'll jump in first. I'll do it kind of briefly because what we're seeing right now is a lot around social engineering defense, right? So you just mentioned a moment ago about, about just social engineering and just, for example, right, one of the things from the DBIR report is the median time. So it takes about less than 60 seconds for someone to actually click on a phishing email for that attack. So imagine, everyone within the educational system having emails from teachers, students, parents, to being vulnerable just to one kind of social engineering attack through phishing. So one of the areas where we help organizations get started is helping them understand kind of what an overall social engineering defense plan is, and then helping build capabilities around that. So starting with a specific use case and then building off of that use case to help them develop a strategy for the future.
Yeah, the other thing I know that.
Oh, go ahead, Kim.
Oh, no, I'm just going to interject. I heard you used the DBIR report, and just to share with everybody on the call, the DBIR report is the data breach investigation report. So Verizon has a very large security practice, but what we do is we actually we publish a report every quarter that talks about like what are the latest hacks. Right? What's the behavior of these bad actors? It's free, it's online. In fact, what we'll do, we'll make it a point of sending that to everybody so that you have that post this call. But I would encourage you to read it because it's everything from physical security, passwords, etc., to walking away from your computer without locking it. Just simple things all the way to, more sophisticated things that are happening in the industry. And, companies like Verizon, we have more internet traffic, majority of the world's internet traffic traverses Verizon at some point. So we have to be really careful about network security as a foundation, but then we've also built a whole practice around helping our customers with security as well. But it is a free resource, and I just encourage you all to access it. We'll make sure you have the link and use it as you would like.
So, I mean, just to kind of tag on to what both Kim and Wes said, first of all, and Kim, that was an awesome point that the internet traffic, traverses the Verizon network. For those of you who've been in education a long time, and if you remember the very first educational forums from years ago, they used to be hosted by an organization called UUNet. UUNet's part of Verizon, right? So if you look at the history of UUNet, it's in Verizon. So that internet growth, what we call the internet, that actually kind of has a base in the Verizon network on the East Coast. So that's one thing. But as we look at the future, right, we look at what is AI going to bring to this network of the future. Imagine a time when your network notifies you that XYZ tried to attack the network about an hour ago. Now you think right away, an hour? But the network also tells you, by the way, we repulsed the attack by doing this, this, and this. However, just go back and check and make sure that there aren't other ways that the attacker would be able to attack. In other words, the network is your security infrastructure. The network becomes your best buddy, your tool, your ultimate delivery vehicle for security within the organization, because the network sees the traffic long before a human will. I mean, I'm human. I know that I compete against AI systems all the time, just trying to figure out how fast they are. I haven't won yet. And I'm not using big high-end LLMs that are running, the entire Azure cloud as their backend, just playing along with the local versions of various AIs. They're still faster than I am. They're also automated. And the one thing, if I had Wes on my security team, which luckily I do, right, I would never be worried. But Wes does occasionally take naps. And when Wes is napping, I don't have Wes's skills available. AI never naps.
Fascinating
Yeah,
stuff.
and I think from a macro view, one of the things I wanted to add was, we talked about the fact that, schools are a target, and government, public sector is a target just in general. And because there isn't unlimited funds, because, there aren't, in a lot of cases, the resources, these bad actors know that, and that's where they really hone in. And so just a really good security strategy is important. And I know, many of you on the call already have that, but we certainly make ourselves available, to chat with you and understand how we can help assist.
Yeah. Now, Kim, at the top of the conversation, you also mentioned about digital equity, and about during the pandemic, that was another real topic and issue that came to the forefront. I remember interviewing tech directors back in April of 2020. They were getting in their cars and driving and handing out hotspots to students, where, like, even in districts where you would assume were wealthy, and that a certain percentage of the students everyone would have access. There were a lot who still didn't have it, and it made sure, it put that issue, front and center. So since that time, I know that Verizon has done a lot of work, industry has done a lot of work in terms of trying to solve those issues. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what you've seen out there on the front lines.
Sure, absolutely. And so during the pandemic, we connected over 1.5 million students with, hotspots, jetpacks, if you will, and other mediums. But essentially, we found a couple of things. One, students weren't prepared, right? Just because you hand them a jetpack doesn't mean they even know how to do email. In fact, most kids don't know how to use email. They just swipe, right? Especially your primary grades, right? So those types of things. And then, making, the teachers weren't prepared. In many cases, the teachers skewed older, and, we're shying away from technology. Then there were different types of technology platforms. You guys, lived through it firsthand. But some of the key learnings really led us to a couple of different things. One, from a network coverage perspective, we realized, right, that, where we were focusing our investment and our build in major metropolitan areas, we realized that, oh my goodness, the connectivity needs are becoming more rural, becoming more suburban. And so we had to change our network infrastructure strategy a bit, right? We're still focused on major cities, of course. But, when you think about, distance learning and learning from home, even from a homework perspective, right? Kids are going to need access to the internet. And if they have access, do they have the network coverage, right? And making sure that that's the case. And so we've really spent the last couple of years really shoring up that forecast and that, shoring up the network and making sure that we're forecasting properly the needs moving forward, right? So what are the trends that we're seeing? We're seeing, certain populations of people move certain places. So that's one thing. The other thing is we realize that, not everybody can afford, internet. So we have actually launched some plans, which we call digital inclusion. And these are plans we make available to government agencies. So, it can be any schools can take advantage of these. Also, higher ed, where there are needs in particular for lower income students. And so we have these digital inclusion programs that will allow them to purchase a device at a very, very low cost and an access at a very, very low cost. And that's all done through our government program. The consumer side of the house at Verizon still has some plans available as well. But digital inclusion in the state education space at Verizon is still running very, very strong. And getting stronger every day. So like I said earlier on, a lot of these federal programs are drying up. A lot of the grants may not be there, but the problem is still there. So we at Verizon view this as part of our responsibility is to make sure that, we're providing, the best offers, right, to make sure that everybody has access. And then if you can't afford access at all, we're actually working with the school system. We have a program called VILS, the Verizon Innovative Learning Schools. And these are schools that are in areas that are socioeconomically challenged. And what we'll do, we'll assess, this has nothing to do with sales at all. This is basically from the foundation and philanthropic area of Verizon. We actually identify those schools that have the most needs. And if the school qualifies and makes it into the program, we'll actually outfit every child with an iPad with complete 24/7 connectivity. So we can't do that with every school, but certainly in lower income areas and strained socioeconomic areas, this is a program where the schools can apply, and we actually will select a school and go all in with technology. In many cases, we're providing like 5G labs, et cetera, so the students get a real hands-on feel for innovation. So, between the digital inclusion plans that are, a low cost of entry plan, for students, through, the VILS program that takes it kind of to the other extreme and making sure that, no child left behind. That's our goal. Even the CEO of our company, Hans Vestberg, is really passionate. I mean, he's been involved in some worldwide forums to figure out how do we solve this problem? Because right now, internet access is just as important as food and water. And so we definitely want to do our part.
Yeah, but Scott, I mean, you were mentioning the 9600 baud modems and the idea of wiring schools, right? And like kind of hardwiring. And back in, I'll talk about it, last century, in 1996, and the E-rate starting, and the importance of getting schools hardwired for what was then as fat as bandwidth as you could get. Again, we move up to 2020. We have the greatest beta test in education history, where all learning suddenly becomes remote. Any types of technology that were at hand were put to use. Strategies that were probably theoretical for many years actually were forced into some sort of reality to various degrees of success. But to add to that is this idea of the access. So if all the kids are in the classroom at the same time, they all have equal access to that hard pipe. Now, when you have a more remote learning setup, or they're going home, but the expectation is that they're still going to send in their homework, or they're going to do their homework online on the cloud, on whatever platform it is, and maybe they don't have those technologies at home, or they don't have, specifically for in Verizon case, they don't have that necessarily that bandwidth. What are the steps for our audience from your perspective on trying to at least get a handle on how to address those inequities from home when they're sitting in the back office of their school district?
Well, yeah. So, and Kim mentioned the concept of what we call a jetpack, or sometimes called a MiFi, which is, for all intents and purposes, it's a hotspot. You can take it. You can have multiple devices. Some of the newer ones, you can have 8, 9, 10 devices connected to it. There's another technology, however, that's very critical. This call that we're doing right now, the video that you're seeing, and the great clapping hand motion, and I apologize for that, but as a former school teacher, I can tell you that second graders will follow your hands if you do this, no matter what. And so you got to keep their attention by moving your hands around a lot. As long as you don't hold the chalk. I did learn that very early in my teaching career. If you're holding chalk and you flip it, you can hit somebody. But there's a concept called fixed wireless access. I'm actually right now connected to Verizon using a fixed wireless access point. I used to have it when I lived in a different place before I moved last summer, in a 5G zone. And so I was 100% 5G ultra wideband, and I literally was getting, 800. I was getting better than cable modem, better than traditional broadband connections from a wireless device, right? So that's step one, is this concept of fixed wireless access. Gives us the ability to offer flexibility. From a school perspective, I mean, I wish I'd had fixed wireless access when I was teaching. Obviously, I was teaching back in the Stone Ages when we still had 9600 baud modems. But if I had a fixed wireless access system and a battery pack, I literally could have doubled the time outside of the classroom. I used to take my kids out. We did Earth Day things. So one of our big Earth Day things was we literally walked around the school with trash bags, and we picked up trash for a day. Then we put it in the display room of my classroom until my principal said, if you don't get that out of the window, you're not going to be here next year. Fair enough. It was trash. But the point being, we would wander around. Well, there were activities we could do outside that if we had a fixed wireless access point, we literally pick it up and take it. It's the size of a shoebox. I'm pointing because it's literally right above my head there. So as a shoebox, you can pick up it. So connectivity, you've got jetpacks or MiFis, you've got the fixed wireless access, and both of those devices support multiple users, right? You're not limited. You don't take a MiFi and put it in somebody's house and one person connects. You can do, you can do the kids' iPads, you can do, laptops, you can do desktop computers, you can even do grandpa's pacemaker. All can connect through that MiFi back into the internet and have that connectivity. The beauty of the MiFis, they're very small, fit in the palm of your hand, take them with you anywhere, move them anywhere. Fixed wireless access a little bigger, but it's a little bit more power, about the size of a shoebox. Weighs more than most shoeboxes do, but it's not horribly heavy. It's about 3.5 pounds. So that gives you connectivity options, right? Which is very important. Once you have connectivity options, then the other thing, and Kim talked about our program that we have Verizon, and there are a number of programs through the federal government, through the Infrastructure Act that was signed about 3 years ago, where they're actually starting to build connectivity frameworks throughout the U.S. So they're building the broadband, building the 5G environment so that more and more and more people are covered. The saddest story, we had a contest a number of years ago when COVID first started at Verizon. And a friend of mine who works in finance at Verizon and I submitted a proposal for the contest. And we actually made the final 10. Our proposal was called No More School Day, No More Snow Days. And it was to help teachers entering that phase of COVID, where basically people started looking at how do I improve the connectivity? How do I get connectivity to all these students? And the reason I'm bringing it up and what I'll end with is, as we were doing this, we were talking to the education leader at Verizon, and she said, listen, I have to tell you a story. I have a friend who owns a series of laundromats in the city. And I don't remember what city she was from at the time. I think she was out of New Jersey, but I have a friend who owns a bunch of laundromats, and her friend apparently went to a laundromat, and there was a group of kids outside. Now, look, I'm not going to say he probably went out thinking, oh, you're going to vandalize my shop. Nice, right? But instead he goes out, right, and he decides, I'm going to ask him, why are you here? And he looks, and all these kids are holding iPads, and they are scribbling like crazy and typing like crazy. And he said, what are you doing? The kids all said, well, it's the only way we can connect to school. They were in the parking lot of a laundromat. So you know what the guy does? Every single one of his laundromats, he puts a table and a bunch of chairs, and he tells the kids, come in, sit where it's warm or where it's cool, use my Wi-Fi, connect to the schools. That, to me, that just says, that's what it's all about is let's help our kids be successful in the future.
Yeah, and it seems that again, it's that human element that sits on top of the hardcore technology that might lead to some of these solutions, right, Wes?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, we've been talking about kind of equity and inclusion as the overall goal, right? But kind of the driver underneath that, right, is really being able to position around contributions and distribution, right? So and then we're talking public sector, we're talking private sector on the contributions and distributions. And Kim talked about the overall kind of contributions, for example, a company like Verizon is making, right? But when you start talking about the public sector and right what's coming available to the government, and this is very exciting news, is one of the reasons to mention this is that the Federal Communications Commission, so the FCC, is actually meeting on Thursday, so June the 6th, to discuss a cybersecurity pilot program. It's called the Schools and Libraries Cybersecurity Pilot Program. It's like a 3-year program, right, that's going to be carving out what would be about $200 million for cybersecurity with E-rate funding. So you talked about E-rate funding for years, right, of things you could get and couldn't get. And so you're starting to see cyber start to drip in, right? And so there's 4 kind of components to this right now. And again, it's coming up for a vote, but it's also going to be open for comments and recommendations. So these 4 areas could change, but it is things for like advanced and next generation firewalls, endpoint protection, so identity protection and authentication, as well as monitoring, detection, and response. So those 4 categories, right, are very broad in nature. And again, tying it back to E-rate funding is going to make it, assuming this, goes through, be accessible, right? So now school systems are going to be able to, right, in the future, be able to procure things in kind of similar form and fashion as they have in the past, right?
Yeah, that's
right.
exciting.
And then also to add on to that, the fixed wireless is a part of the E-rate program as well as a primary connection. So that's going to be coming, and of course you probably are all familiar with E-rate dollars for school bus internet, which we just finished that round of support. So when I think about FWA or fixed wireless access as we call it, think about any broadband connection that you would typically have through cable. And if you could do it through cable, you could do it through fixed wireless access. And you're going to be able to get the speeds and feeds that you need. It's not going to be the answer to every single application. You can't put terabytes of data through a fixed wireless access connection and expect it to be great. But literally, right, you're getting up to a gig of throughput in some cases with FWA. And so now we're at that kind of crossroads where wireless can perform at a level of our wireline technologies. And so, but it provides all the flexibility, right? I mean, Scott talked about going outside. I mean, and being able to take your technology with you and, change their environment, change their opportunity to learn new things in a different environment. So these are all things, and thanks for bringing it up, Wes, but through the E-rate program that I know that, resources are not unlimited. So this is an excellent way to be able to afford these technologies and making sure that, you get the connectivity and you're locking it down with the right security.
Yeah, so we did a pretty good job, almost 40 minutes into our conversation here. And I think Scott might have mentioned it briefly, but we've yet to say AI. The acronym has completely taken over most of the oxygen in any technology conversation, but with good reason. It obviously is, another kind of pivot point in terms of the state of education and the future of education and the use of technologies and the use of Verizon connectivity powers to educate students. So if I have all 3 of you on here on the Zoom at the same time, I want to tap into your thoughts about where we are in the state of play. I mean, where are we in the cycle? I mean, I felt a fear cycle this time last year. AI was going to replace all the teachers, right? And then there was a hype cycle where every education technology company is now an AI company. And what I'm hoping is maybe we're going into a reality cycle here of how these technologies are actually going to be implemented and used. And so really, I just maybe Scott, I'll put you on the hot seat first on your thoughts of AI and how it's going to affect both the services that you provide and what it means for education in general.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it goes back to that. You have a reliable connection. AI is a little bit more powerful, but when we talk about what AI represents, right? And I talked a little bit about the future of AI being the network is able to respond to threats. The network becomes your first security and maybe your best security barrier. But when we talk about AI in the classroom, now things are changing and radically. So the Khan Academy, well-known free education resource available for adults and children, and Microsoft just announced a partnership where they are releasing an AI assistant for every single teacher in the U.S., right? You simply go to the website, sign up for it, you get it for free. There's no cost to it, right? Oh, well, that's cool, Scott, right? Yeah, great. I got another tech tool. But let me talk about a problem that I had many years ago when I was teaching. I had a young lady arrive. Her parents were going to Indiana University. They were both doctoral students, and she was from Somalia. She didn't speak English. I sadly do not speak, I believe it's Somali, but I will apologize if I said it incorrectly. I don't speak it. I don't speak the language. Now, she and I were able to communicate initially, right? Chalkboard, Apple, right? The simple stuff, but it was a really difficult process. Now, and again, I almost wish I were teaching now again, because I could literally go and I could have my phone and using ChatGPT or using Copilot or using Gemini and get a live translation. She could speak into my phone in Somali, and again, I apologize if I said that incorrectly. I would hear it in English. I could then speak in English in response, and she would hear it in Somali, right? So, okay, well, what does that do? Well, that takes away the concept, right? Going back to what Kim was talking about, right? The concept of digital inclusion. Now we are talking about personal inclusion as well. The student will no longer have to necessarily learn the language quite as fast, but think about the other power of this, right? An AI assistant that the teacher can say, okay, I am covering the concept of core-based mathematics, right? 2 plus 2 equal 4, right? Which is in second grade, I used to teach second grade, 2 plus 2 equals 4. Now, then we spin the kids around in fourth grade and we say, 2 plus 2 only equals 4 if it was 2 bananas to 4 bananas. 2 bananas, 2 oranges is 4 fruit, but it's 2 bananas and 2 oranges still, right? You don't mess with kids until fourth grade. At least I didn't. The point being, we're teaching core mathematics, right? Well, if you don't speak the language, then that core mathematics skill becomes more difficult to understand. Take your virtual tutor home with you, and the virtual tutor can walk you through it in your native language to help you understand it. But then let's go even one step further. I had a kid that was so smart when he took the state test, blew the numbers off the back end of the test. I mean, just the smartest kid I've ever met in my life. He was bored 90% of the time. And I gave him enrichment activities. But as a school teacher, I didn't have time to go actually build a bunch of enrichment activities for one kid. I mean, 22 kids in a classroom, you are stretched really thin, and your job is to get all 22 to the next grade, not one, skipping one more grade. Now with AI, if this kid is passionate about dinosaurs, I can hand him an iPad pre-set up with an AI, controlled, managed, delivered, but it will tell him everything about dinosaurs, everything he ever wanted to know, everything he wanted to research. He'll be off in the corner and won't bother the other students asking them if they're done yet. Are you done yet? Blah, 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 right? So you've got enrichment. You've got the ability to support students that are struggling. So you can do personal tutoring. You can do all of these concepts. And all of this stuff is going to happen very quickly. like I said, Khan and Microsoft just released a personal assistant. So this capability is almost here, and we are so close to being able to say, okay, do this. And then the last piece of this, and this is something I actually, many years ago, I started an international teaching society on the internet. We had 15,000 members throughout the world. And one of the things that we used to all talk about back then was, wouldn't it be cool if we could have a central way to have known good lesson plans? You want to teach, my personal passion back when I was in second grade, I wrote an article for Learning Magazine. You want to teach about the impact of acid rain on corn. I was in Indiana. Shockingly, Indiana grows a lot of corn. The impact of acid rain on corn is very different than the impact on soybeans. In fact, soybeans kind of like acid rain. They're like, ooh, more of that acid, please, more. But corn goes, time out. Yeah, I don't like this. You know, you're destroying my roots. I don't like this at all. Stop dumping this on me, right? So, you know, that ability, those lesson plans, those types of things, you can literally go, the teacher will be able to go to the AI and type it in and say, I want to teach my kids, I want to teach my class how to measure the velocity and the distance traveled of a model rocket. And it will lay out the formula, and then the teacher can put that formula back into the chat and say, now explain this to me. And it will explain it. And then the teacher can the next day go talk to their kids about, we're going to build a model rocket and launch it, and here's why. So it is an amazing opportunity for the future.
Yeah, Kim, any thoughts from your perspective of what you're seeing, how AI is affecting Verizon customers and districts?
Absolutely, thank you. So I can't one up Scott there. He's had some great examples, so I won't even try. But a couple things I wanted to share is that, number one, Verizon's been using AI for a very long time. Now Gen AI, right, is new on the forefront. So I would just say that, you know, as a company, you know, we've embraced AI, and if you interact with us either by, you know, the website or digitally on the app, or even calling in, you know, you're likely to experience AI. We are working with Gen AI in our environment to make sure that we're even able to further personalize that experience. So if you can imagine calling in and, you know, AI understanding, you know, why you're calling before you call, based on the behaviors that you did online, based on you know, the situation that we've been able to capture over time, right, as a customer, so that you get a very personalized experience when you work with Verizon. And we aspire to do more of that with Gen AI. We're doing it already with AI. I think the big thing is doing it responsibly and securely, but then also making sure that we're adhering to privacy, which is very, very important. A lot of people worry about that, right? Especially with Gen AI, and you hear about platforms hallucinating and all of those things. So, you know, we take it very, very seriously. And for us, while we've been at this for a while, Gen AI takes kind of a bit of a different approach. So I would say, I used to say, you know, rewind 6 months, you know, crawl, walk, run approach. I think we're more to the walk, run approach, or things are moving so quickly. I think we're in a sprint at this point. But again, I think the point that I want to try to make on top of all of this is Verizon as a company is taking a very responsible approach to AI and Gen AI, and you'll see that in the services that we offer, the resources and the consulting that we do in our security practice. So everything in our environment, we're learning every day. We're learning new things every day and new applications, and we're trying to find, you know, areas where we can improve. And I think all that, you know, translates to our customer base as well, and helping you all be able to realize those efficiencies. So just a lot going on in this space, and so I'll hand it over to Wes to add anything he wants to add.
Yeah, so I'll add, and this is kind of something, an interesting observation, because you talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, right, analytics, all these different things, right? and then cybersecurity. And what's, started to recognize about 4 or 5 years ago was that you're starting to see the skill sets of a generation of a workforce coming in to the workforce that has a much more diverse background, especially in mathematics, because they're interested in AI, right? It's being pumped into them. And so what's underneath the hood of that? It's mathematics, right? And so you're seeing people get more tuned into the mathematics side of things, and then being able to start to fuse together big data and cybersecurity. I used to manage a team of about 70 people, and about 50 of them were on the big data and artificial intelligence side, and the other 20 were on the cybersecurity side. And it was intentional. We were bringing those two groups together because, again, it was kind of like, I'd always tell them that cybersecurity is really just kind of big data and analytics with a different shade of lipstick on it, because what you're doing is you're fusing together large swaths of information to make informed decisions at real-time speed. So, I mean, I'll close with this is, again, it's interesting to see the trend where you're seeing people coming in that have the background in big data and analytics and AI with some cybersecurity fused into it, and then having a diverse skill set to be able to maneuver between multiple different capabilities, whether it's security, AI, network, it's kind of all coming together.
It is fascinating just listening to all of you kind of go back and forth with each other. And I really feel that if we were having this conversation 5 years ago, we would have been just talking about the speeds and feeds of connectivity, right? And then a separate conversation would have been all about cybersecurity. And then there have been a separate conversation about, but it seems to be, and especially when you look, you're all mentioning E-rate, which I consider to be probably the most effective funding mechanism, government funding mechanism, and it really is the reason why schools are wired like they are. That itself is starting to now expand, as you all mentioned. I mean, and to look at the various aspects that are beyond just how fat the pipe is, right, or how the equivalent of the wireless pipe, how fat that is. And so I think you're giving our listeners a great perspective on how things are changing and how they need to look at that. So I thank you. And I knew the toughest part of my job this afternoon would be to end the conversation. We could go on for a while. I mean, these topics are never ending. But as we wrap up, I want to give each of you kind of an opportunity to look, kind of a horizon question. As we sit here, thankfully post-pandemic, we've talked about the state of play of where schools are. Give us a little bit of your crystal ball, some prognostication on where you see the technologies that you're working with in conjunction with schools continuing to improve or to evolve over the next 2 or 3 years. And maybe Wes, I'll put you on the hot seat for this one first.
Yeah, that's good. It's again, I talked about my mother being a teacher, right? And me being the one that knew how to use the computer, and then being involved in helping her figure out how to use it, right? So what we've been talking a lot about is like the students, right? And so we're seeing kind of a demand from the students, but then when you shift it over to like the educator, to the teacher, right, of seeing a shift and pivot into helping them become more adverse and capable in using technology, right? So I think we're seeing a groundswell of activity when it comes to the students, but then I think that's going to drive demand to help better educate and get the teachers, right, the things that they need to be able to conform to the needs of those students. So again, that's not anything related to cybersecurity, right? And I'm just speaking from experience from what I've seen growing up and helping a teacher learn how to use technology, right? And she try to keep me in shape as well too.
Absolutely, yeah. The professional development and again, using AI to help teachers, not scare teachers,
Right.
and to see that these are things that can really to help them.
Oh yeah. I mean, the first time my mother got a phone call about a password reset.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was that was, I think that was the end of it for her. She was like, I'm not doing that.
Exactly. And Kim, how about your thoughts about the horizon?
Oh my gosh. Well, I couldn't be more excited about the horizon based on everything we talked about. But also, I think I mentioned my daughter was an early childhood educator. She's actually a professor at University of South Florida. She's doing her dissertation on technology and digital transformation and comprehension levels between reading content from a book or reading contact from an iPad? You know, what does that comprehension look like? And I will tell you, without giving away the punchline, the early findings are that, you know, if you can make that digital learning experience interactive, okay, we talked a lot about AI, right? You can make that digital learning experience interactive versus passive, and that comprehension is the same, if not better, than reading a book. And this is K through 5 research. So excited for her to finish that up. But what it's telling me and what she has learned is that, look, I mean, kids are coming to school. You know, we always joke that they're born with a tablet in their hand, and they can swipe before they can hold a pencil. So it's important for us, I think, as, you know, as parents, as educators, as technologists, to make sure that we're providing, you know, all the best technology, all the best connectivity, and all the best tools and transformation. So it's an exciting journey that we're all on. Verizon is passionate about this. I mentioned our commitment during the pandemic, but that certainly has surpassed. It was pre-pandemic, pandemic, and then now post, as we work toward making sure that, you know, no child is left behind. So I'm super excited about this, and I hope that you all will take advantage of these resources.
Excellent. Thanks, Kim. And Scott, we'll leave you with the last word.
Oh, well, wow, that's an honor. So I'm going to shockingly start with a story, because I always tell stories. Many years ago when I was teaching, I was actually tasked with running a system-wide computer class in the summer. Basically June, July, August, summer computer class. You know, they said, look, nobody else will do this. Will you run this class? And I'm like, sure. What's our goal? What are we doing? Why are we having this class? Well, you need to teach these kids about computer literacy. Okay, great. How many computers do I get? Well, we have 3. How many? Okay, 3 is fine. How many kids in the class? You have 40. Oh, okay. So what I did is I sat down and I thought for a long time about what would be the best way for 3 kids to use, or 40 kids to use 3 computers. Would have been better with 3 kids and 40 computers.
Yeah, right.
But how do we do it? So I decided back then, we're going to build a HyperCard stack. Now I've really dated how old I am. HyperCard no longer worked after the Apple chips moved off after Apple moved off the Motorola chips. You couldn't run HyperCard anymore. But HyperCard was the original hypertext learning system. It was designed around the concept of virtually web pages, and you could connect the web pages together. So I decided I was going to have my kids create a HyperCard stack about dinosaurs. Okay, so that was my goal, right? So we got a scanner, and we were scanning images of dinosaurs in, and we were scanning the environments, and I had the kids, I made very careful, I made them go back and figure out exactly what dinosaurs went in what environments, and they did that. And then one day, one of the little kids, because I had kids the other side of this equation, I had 1st graders to 6th graders in my class. So besides the fact that I was going slowly but surely insane, but the 6th graders were all awesome leaders, and they were helping the little kids. But one of the little kids came up to me and said, Mr. Anderson, what did dinosaurs sound like? Well, that was a great question, and we talked about it, and the kids spent the rest of the afternoon creating dinosaur noises, right? So I'm sitting there that night, and I'm you know, talking to a friend of mine that works at Apple support, and I'm like, can I put sound into a HyperCard? And he said, well, yeah, sorta. You have to be really careful how you do it, but you know, and he gave me the code to actually go do that, right? So I built that. It was done. We showed it to the teachers. We showed it to the students. Everybody loved it. The school system actually sent it up to Chicago, and we actually got to meet Bill Atkinson, the man that created HyperCard in Chicago. It was a class field trip. It was a blast. But the end of that, I was playing around 2 days ago, knowing I was coming on this forum and knowing that this was a potential question that would come up. I decided I'm going to create a Teams bot. So in Microsoft Teams, a bot. So you literally go into the Teams client, and I would show it, but I don't have Teams on my work PC, or I would show it to you. But you basically go into Teams, click on this bot, and it will tell you everything you want to know about dinosaurs. Now, okay, Scott, that's great. So you knew all that crap before. now you're telling me you did it again. Great, that's awesome. Let's pat you on the back. Kudos, way to go. It took me 11 weeks in the summer to create, digitize, and build a HyperCard stack with the kids. And they each, and I'm not kidding, those kids worked their fingers to the bone at least 2 hours every single day. So you're looking at between, I don't know, 800 to 1,000 hours of real work to get that HyperCard stack done. I built the team spot in about 11 minutes. And the only reason it took me 11 minutes is I didn't copy it the first time. So when I tried to paste 4 times and I was sitting there going control paste, control P, control, why isn't there code coming in to the window? Oh, oops. Went back, copied it, pasted it into the window and ran it. And it literally took me 11 minutes minus the 4 minutes of me being a little slow at my age and not remembering control V, control V. Oh, and control C first. But yeah, it's an amazing new world. The capabilities are there. I would, as Kim said, take advantage of the tools that are available. I'm jealous. I wish they had been available when I was teaching. Imagine what it was like with a computer class with 3 computers and 40 kids. It's, I'm jealous as all get out. The opportunity is there. The power is there. Take advantage.
That's a great way to wrap things up. And I see that our time is just about up, so I'm going to wrap it up. I'd like to thank our panel today for a very informative presentation. And I'd like to thank all the audience members for joining us as well. As a reminder, you'll get an email within the next few days that contains a link to this recording along with the slides. Thanks again for participating and have a great day.